morning, everyone, and welcome to the SBA's certification webinar. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Sandra Anguiano, and I'm a Business Opportunity Specialist at the Orange County Inland Empire District Office. We cover Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties here in Southern California. The programs we will be discussing today are available nationwide, so the same rules apply across the board. A copy of the presentation will be provided, as well as a link to the recording. I will be sharing numerous websites and links throughout the presentation today, so don't worry about having to jot those down because these will be live links once you receive a copy of the presentation. So today we are going to cover the 4 SBA certification programs, which are the 8A Business Development Program, the HUBZone Contracting Program, the Woman-Owned Small Business Contracting Program, and the Veterans Certification Program. For those of you who have joined online via Teams, please make sure to use the Q&A box to type out any questions you may have throughout the presentation. My colleagues will be monitoring that and answering those questions there in the chat. With such a large group, we don't have the function to go ahead and unmute the lines. That usually creates a lot of background noise, so it's just easier to type the questions out into the Q&A box. So please feel free to do so, and we will get to those questions throughout the presentation. Before we go ahead and jump into the actual SBA certification programs, I am going to give you a quick introduction to government contracting. This may be useful information for those of you that are just starting off, or this information may serve as a refresher or clarification for those of you who have already started the process. So let's go ahead and jump into this, and then we'll get started with the certification programs. So the first question that comes to mind is, what does the federal government buy? So the federal government buys just about everything, from office supplies to janitorial services to the construction of government facilities and much, much more. They are the largest procurer of goods and services with set annual goals for their huge budget. So businesses should do market research to determine if the federal government buys its service or product. We recommend that you do your market research to find out what the government is buying or how they're buying it. In the next few slides, we will cover a few useful links for you to use as a starting point to conduct this market research. This is also a good opportunity for me to point out that there are various levels of government and not all certifications are equal. So the state is going to have its own process of procuring. Cities are going to have their own programs that they want you to go through in order to do business with them. And even large businesses and prime contractors have their own process. So it's important to identify who you want to do business with to determine what certification you need. So where can you go to conduct market research? On this slide here, we provide you with a few links to get you started. So the first one here is sam.gov. For all government certifications, you will be required to have a SAM account. So this is something that you want to get started on as soon as possible. On sam.gov, you can search by keyword, by industry, by specific state or specific agency to find opportunities. On sam.gov is where you're going to find anything that is over $25,000 because anything over $25,000 is required to post. We also have the Dynamic Small Business Search System, or DSBS. This site allows you to look at which contractors are selling to the federal government. So it helps you identify your competitors. This system is managed by the SBA, and the DSBS system will actually be where your certifications are listed. Your SBA certifications will show up here on DSBS. There's also the Interagency Directory, or ICD. This is a central repository of indefinite delivery vehicles awarded by the federal agencies. Then we have the USA Spending website. This site provides information on how the federal government spends money or how they forecast to in the near future. GSA Library is your one source for the latest GSA contract award information, so that's also a very good resource. And then there is also the Acquisition Central site, which allows you to search forecasts by agency. So it kind of narrows down your search a little there. So each of the links will take you to their sites. So this is a great starting point for you to conduct market research. Once you check out all of their sites, you'll see that everyone offers different trainings, webinars, and they list their points of contact for any questions you may have. So please check these out when you receive a copy of the presentation. The federal government has prime contracting procurement goals that must annually be met. There are certain set-asides for certification programs and socioeconomic categories. Of the huge budget that the federal government receives each year, 23% of their total contracting dollars must be spent on small business. Specifically, there are targeted set-asides and acquisition goals for the following programs. 5% must go to women-owned small businesses. 13% must go to small disadvantaged businesses, such as 8A firms. 3% must go to HUBZone business. 3% must go to service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. Set-asides are reserved for small businesses between $3,500 to $250,000. To give you a general idea as to how much money is going to these certification programs, we put together some numbers here on this slide for you just for reference. So you can see the FY22 achievement, how much money and the percentages of the large budget that actually went into these programs. So for small business, there's a 23% goal, and in FY22, $162.9 billion were awarded to small businesses. For small disadvantaged businesses, such as 8A firms, there's that 13% goal. So $69.9 billion were spent. They were just below on reaching that goal because last year the goal was actually 12% and it went up to 13% this year. So they almost reached that goal. For women-owned small businesses, the goal is 5%, and they just fell short of that, but $28.1 billion were awarded to women-owned small businesses. $16.3 billion were awarded to HUBZone small businesses, and $28.1 billion went to service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses. We do have the source link here on this slide if you're interested in looking up that information and reviewing the actual dollar amounts and percentages for each of these programs. In order to be eligible for any of the SBA's certification programs, you must be a small business in accordance with SBA's size standards. So the SBA determines the size standards for a small business, and there are two ways that size is looked at. Size is determined either by your average revenues over the past 5 years or by the number of employees. So this applies to manufacturers, dealers, and wholesalers. So this is going to depend upon your primary industry code. You will need to determine your primary industry code in order to determine if you fall under the threshold for revenue or number of employees. There's a link for the size standard table provided here in this slide. So there are hundreds of NAICS codes. So the first step would be to identify your code and then look it up to determine if you are considered small based on SBA's size standards. What types of businesses are getting contracts? This slide provides an overview as to how or where the government spent its money. It is broken down by industry codes. There are various sectors depending upon which product or service you provide. Industry codes are very important in the federal government, so you want to make sure that you get familiar with them. You know, NAICS codes, you're going to hear this over and over again. The North American Industry Classification System. So essentially what that means is that you pick the code that best suits your business, and then, you know, whenever you're asked for your code, you already know that 6-digit number. No one is going to come and assign you a NAICS code. You alone must identify your industry code. So these NAICS codes are used to track what the federal government is buying. So you're going to have this number listed on your SAM profile to demonstrate that you can provide a specific product or service. So as long as you have a business, you must have a business activity code. And your code merely describes your primary and secondary income producing lines of business. So most businesses have more than one revenue producing line of business, but you will need to identify one industry as your primary source of income. But you can have more than one industry listed on your profile. As long as you can provide that service and have the appropriate licenses, you can list those codes on your profile as well. As you start working with the federal government, you may want to look for opportunities as a subcontractor. Typically primes or large businesses are the ones that get those bigger contracts, and they have subs working under them. So if you aren't at the level to perform on your own as a prime contractor, you would want to subcontract. It is a great opportunity for your small business to gain capacity and experience, and you can list this as past performance for working as a subcontractor. So large procurements have subcontracting requirements. So there are prime contractors that are looking for small businesses like you. So visit their websites or contact their supplier diversity department to learn how to do business with them and become a sub. As you start digging into contracting, you will discover that there are many tiers. And here on this side, we have a few tips that we offer for starting to work with federal agencies. So we recommend that you focus on a few agencies at a time. Do research, concentrate on those. There are numerous agencies and they all buy various things. So review forecasts to see what's coming, visit their websites, see what news they have on there, the latest, most up-to-date information. You can contact the agency directly. Each website will have a listed Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, the OSDBU. And you can visit, that website to learn how to do business with them. You're going to have to register on sam.gov because every contractor must be registered if you want to do business with the federal government. This is where the federal government will confirm you are a legitimate business, and this is also where you will be paid for providing your product or service. So step number one for any of SBA certification programs is to have that SAM profile set up. Our systems will actually not allow you to access the applications until your SAM profile is verified and active. So this process can take 4 to 6 weeks. So you want to make sure that you start setting it up as soon as possible. Although to be honest, I think right now it's taking a little longer than even the 6 weeks. So it's a free service. It's a profile you can do on your own completely free. So get started as soon as possible with that as well to not delay your applications for any of the certification programs. As I said, this is completely free. So when you visit the sam.gov website, just make sure you're on the right website. If you are asked to pay, then you're probably in the wrong spot. So make sure it's not a .net, .com, .org. Make sure it is sam.gov, and when you reach that page, make sure it has on there the official U.S. government website, and it'll tell you it is 100% free. If you'd like more general information on government contracting, I invite you to visit SBA's Government Contracting Classroom, and we have the link here on this slide. Here you will find 5 to 6 minute videos on various topics related to government contracting. There are even videos on there on how to set up your SAM profile, how to contact the OSDBU, and just many, many more topics. So I recommend you check it out if you have no knowledge yet, if this is your first dive into federal contracting. This website is also completely free, and you can play the videos as many times as you'd like. The SBA also has a YouTube channel with helpful videos, so I invite you to check that out as well. If you are interested in doing business with other government levels, you'll have to visit their websites. All of SBA's certification programs are at the federal level. So if you're looking to get certified as an SBE or DDBE, you would need to go through state procurement. So if you're within our Tri-County area, you can reach out to each county, to learn how to do business with them. Different organizations administer different programs. So their process is, completely different from the SBA application. So make sure you know who you want to do business with, what certification you want, so you are in the right spot for that application. For assistance with even state and local certifications, you can also reach out to your local Apex Accelerator, formerly PTAC, for free assistance. This resource partner is funded by DoD, Department of Defense, and they can assist small businesses with procurement. So check them out. It's really important, to find out who you want to do business with first to learn what you need to do in order to participate in their programs. Okay, so this concludes the introduction to federal government contracting. I hope you have found this information useful and that you visit the links when you receive a copy of the presentation. We will now go ahead and get started with the information on the 8A Business Development Program. The 8A Business Development Program was named after a section of the Small Business Act and designated to help small disadvantaged businesses to compete in the American economy and access the federal procurement market. So it was created to help firms that are owned and controlled by at least 51% socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. We will talk about what it means to be socially and economically disadvantaged when we get to the eligibility criteria, and we will also go over what it means to be owned and controlled and how the SBA reviews that information. This program provides entrepreneurs with targeted management and technical assistance to help them compete for contracts and other business opportunities. And this program offers a 9-year term and a one-time only participation. So you can only participate in the program once in a lifetime. You can't reapply for the program and have another 9 years. It's a one-time 9-year term. So what are the benefits of the program? Why should you get certified into the 8A program? Well, the federal government's goal is to award at least 13% of all federal contracting dollars to small disadvantaged businesses each year. So every year, this number has gradually been on a rise. So now we're at 13%. As a participant in the program, we will provide you with management and technical assistance, marketing and outreach assistance with the mentor protege and joint venture programs. You can, even form joint ventures with established businesses through the SBA's mentor protege program. You can find more information on these programs at sba.gov. These programs are managed by headquarters. We can help answer general questions here at the local district office, but for more program specifics, please check out our website. As a program participant, you will also have access to surplus property. So these are tools and equipment from the state, owned by the state, that you can get for pennies on the dollar. So it's all equipment and excess property that the state has that they sell, that they need to get rid of, and you will have access to that equipment and tools. The biggest draw to the program, of course, is the contract set-asides and the sole source award opportunities. So these set-asides can be for up to $4.5 million for goods and services and up to $7 million for manufacturing. As a small business, you can also participate in SBA's 7J Management and Technical Assistance Program. There are various courses and trainings that are available for you at no cost, so you want to make sure you check those out and take advantage of that as well. In the next few slides, we will be talking about the eligibility requirements for this program. So each category that you see listed here on this slide is something that you're going to be asked to provide information for in order to determine your eligibility. So we will talk about ownership, control, U.S. citizens, small business size standards, potential for success, good character, social disadvantage, and economic disadvantage. On the right here in the red text is a reference for the Code of Federal Regulations, the citing as to where you can find it, in case you're interested in looking up all the legal terms that constitute this program. At the bottom here, we do have a note that you must be in business for at least 2 years before applying for this program, and I'll explain why that rule exists later on as we discuss the eligibility criteria. Okay, so first let's talk about ownership. We require that the individual upon whom eligibility is based directly and unconditionally own at least 51% of the firm. So this must be direct ownership by the disadvantaged individual. You cannot be owned by another company. You cannot be owned by another trust. You, the individual must be the individual owner at 51% or more. That can be more than one person to make up that 51% ownership. But just keep in mind that if you have more than one owner, each individual will need to meet every eligibility criteria to be a participant in this program. If you are married and residing in a community property state, such as California, it may be necessary to submit a notarized transmutation agreement to ensure that the disadvantaged individual owns at least 51%. Community property rights do impact unconditional ownership. There is no requirement on the structure of the business, so you can be a partnership, an LLC, a corporation, a sole proprietorship, whatever structure you'd like to use for your business. But these here are examples of what SBA will require to demonstrate that 51% ownership. So we're going to ask for things like stock certificates and ledgers, your IRS 1040 schedule, Schedule C, if you're a single member LLC, or Schedule E, whatever is applicable to the structure of your business. You are going to have to submit your firm's tax returns. So what the reviewer will be looking for is proof that on paper you can demonstrate that you own at least 51% of the business. Our next requirement is control. So the firm must show that one or more socially and economically disadvantaged individuals serve as the highest officer, control the board, make long-term decisions, run the firm's day-to-day business operations, receive the highest compensation from the firm, possess the appropriate amount and type of management experience needed to run the firm, have the ability to hire and fire, work full-time at the applicant firm, and be physically located in the United States. For all of SBA's programs, you must be a U.S. citizen in order to participate. You will be asked to provide a copy of your U.S. passport or certificate of naturalization. To be eligible for the 8A program, you must be a small business. So what exactly does that mean? So you must identify your primary NAICS code or industry code and determine if it falls under the revenue or number of employee threshold. So as we mentioned in our intro, the size is determined either by your average revenues over the past 5 years or by the number of employees averaged over 24 months. And this is for manufacturers, dealers, and wholesalers. There's a link for the size standard table provided in this slide, or you can simply do a quick Google search for it. There are hundreds of NAICS codes, so the first step would be to identify your code and then look it up to determine if you are considered small based on SBA size standards. The SBA will also look at the firm's and the principal's relationships with other businesses and other individuals through prior relationships, family ties, or common investments. So if you have ownership in other businesses, you must disclose that information as well with your application. That is going to be used to determine the size of your business and see if you do qualify as a small business. Potential for success. So your firm must have the necessary track record and financial capacity to perform successfully on contracts awarded in the 8A program. So your firm must meet potential for success criteria. Typically, this is demonstrated by the firm being operational for at minimum 2 full years, as verified by revenues reported in your primary NAICS code. And we will take a look at your business tax returns to verify that information. So we want to make sure that participants in our program are ready and that they will be successful in the program. We don't want this to be a burden or for it to cost you any money. We want you to make money and win contracts while you are a participant in the 8A program. So the federal government has certain requirements for businesses that are looking to bid on projects, which is very different from the private sector. So in anticipation of that, we do a precursor and review your business for that potential for success. So we will take a look at your financial capability, make sure you have, sufficient capitalization, financial performance, bonding capacity, and manageable debts, your managerial and technical capability, performance on previous contracts, that the firm has the necessary personnel, licenses, certifications, facilities, and prior experience, your management capability, the education, experience, and training of CEO and other managers, the magnitude and complexity of past or current jobs and your management systems, your qualifications for ability to perform on federal contracts, so any relevant contracting experience, your ability to meet federal procurement policies. We just want to be sure that if you get into the program, you can take advantage of those contracting benefits and you'll be able to successfully bid and win on these contracts. So you must be in business in your primary NAICS code for at least 2 full years immediately prior to the date of your 8A application. So for at least 2 years before you even apply, you must have been doing business in that primary NAICS code, so that you can prove on paper, that you have been successful in operating your business for at least 2 years. This is, why it's very important to identify that NAICS code and make sure that that's also listed on your tax returns. Sometimes businesses transition from doing one thing to another. It could be in a related industry, it could not. So what we are looking for is proof, like on paper, that you have been doing work in the same NAICS code for at least 2 years. So you're going to have to provide proof that you have generated revenue. Now, if the business has not generated revenues for the preceding 2 years, if you don't have tax returns to prove that, you can request the 2-year waiver. So you can request this if you switch to a different industry, maybe you switch NAICS codes and you can't demonstrate that you have been doing business in that specific NAICS code that you're applying for. You can request a waiver, but there are a few conditions that have to be met in order for this waiver to be granted. So you're going to have substantial business management experience. You must demonstrate your technical expertise. You must have adequate capital, and you must have a record of successful performance on contracts. So the waiver may be granted, but the firm has to address each of these elements in detail. You'll have to provide copies of contracts, letters of reference to verify your successful contract performance, copies of invoices, proof of payments on invoices, and things like that to prove that you can generate the revenue. If the firm has not generated any revenues, then the firm will be unable to waive the 2-year rule. So as a business owner, you should strategically consider the timing on applying if your business experience is limited, and your exposure to the federal marketplace is at its infancy. So businesses who have an established track record as a subcontractor or prime contractor at the federal level, they tend to experience greater growth and higher levels of success and sustainability than those businesses that are just starting off in federal contracting. The 8A program is a one-time only 9-year term program. So you should really think about when to apply to the program so that you can make the most of the limited time and increase your chances of winning contracts. So ask yourself these questions, and be honest. Be honest with yourself. If you're a single person company who has never done a contract larger than, 250,000, you may want to focus on building your business a bit more before applying for the program. Some firms may be eligible for the 8A Business Development Program, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are ready to contract with the federal government. So ask yourself these questions to determine if you are on a path to success. Is your business procurement ready? Make sure you are ready to do business with the government before you go and obtain these certifications. Can you identify, the federal agencies that purchase what you sell? Can you provide examples of similar work that your firm has completed that generated revenue? Are you prepared to access a line of credit or performance bond if required? Do you have financial and payroll systems that are compatible with the government's requirements and that can produce financial statements and payroll records? Even something as basic as, have you selected a NAICS code? Are you registered in SAM? Have you completed a capability statement? So, your potential for success will depend on what stage your business is in. So are you just starting up or are you well seasoned? It's better to be a little more well seasoned before you apply for these certifications than to just have a business starting up and you're trying to bid on these contracts. So really think about when you should apply because it's a one-time only. You can't pause your certification, your active status once you come into the program. It's 9 years and that's it. So really think about when you should apply. Okay, another criteria for eligibility is good character. So the SBA wants to make sure that participants in our program have good character. So SBA is going to take a look at the following to make this decision. So we will take a look at any adverse information regarding criminal conduct, violations of any SBA regulations, debarred or suspended firms or individuals, any principal who is incarcerated or on parole, submission of false information during the application process or after approval, any firm or any of its principals that fail to pay financial obligations to the federal government. So for that last bullet there, examples of that are any tax liens, if you're delinquent on a student loan, if you defaulted on an SBA loan, or any federal obligation will lead to them finding that you do not have good character. So perhaps if you had a tax lien, in the past, but you're on a payment plan now, then that's fine as long as you can show that you have that payment plan and that you're current with it. Then that's okay. You would just need to submit proof of that to overcome that. If you have any financial obligations to the federal government. Okay, now let's talk about social disadvantage. So, throughout the presentation, you've heard me say socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. So it has to be both criteria that you meet. So the definition of social disadvantage means that an individual has been subjected to racial, ethnic, or cultural bias within American society because of their identities as members of groups and without regard to their individual qualities. So an individual, applying for this program will only need to establish their social disadvantage once for the entirety of the program term. So SBA must determine that the discrimination or bias experienced by an individual is chronic, substantial, and has occurred within American society, not within another country. So additionally, the discrimination must have negatively impacted your entry or advancement in the business world. So new applicants who are claiming the social and economic disadvantage can demonstrate their individual social disadvantage through one of two options. So you can either write a narrative or you can complete a fillable questionnaire that's available in Certify in the application process. So for those business owners who choose to write a narrative, Generally, a length of at least 3 pages is sufficient, but it may be more or less. For those business owners who choose to complete the questionnaire online, I believe you can input a maximum of 1,000 characters per each fillable field. And of course, whether you write the narrative or decide to do the questionnaire, the SBA can still come back and request additional information if needed. To demonstrate your social disadvantage, business owners should include the following elements. So you're going to want to have an indication of which identity or identities is or are the basis of your social disadvantage. So clearly describing which identity or characteristics you possess, which have been subject to discrimination, helps the SBA understand your experience and eligibility for the 8A program. So some examples of this are, race, religion, ethnic origin, gender, sexual orientation, identifiable disability, isolation from American society, and others are all categories of identities or characteristics which have formed the basis of successful social disadvantage submissions. So it is important to specify the identities or characteristics within, those categories which form the basis of your social disadvantage. So, for example, you can say that you're a subcontinent Asian American woman. That would be like an example of a specific identity within the race and gender categories. Usually, one identity or characteristic is sufficient to establish your social disadvantage. Although, if you have multiple characteristics or identities, you can specify more than one. It's often difficult to determine which single characteristic is subjected to discrimination. Your descriptions of incidents in which bias or discrimination has occurred. An individual should typically provide 2 incidents of bias to establish chronic and substantial social disadvantage. So one incident may be enough to establish your social disadvantage if it is pervasive or recurring. So the SBA, recommends limiting yourself to 2 examples just to avoid unnecessary delays during the review process. Experiences should be related to education, employment, and business history. This can include, current or previously owned companies. Here we have, let me see, I have some examples that are included for you. If you visit that guide for writing a social disadvantage narrative, which we have linked on this slide. So in education, the SBA considers factors such as, denial of equal access to institutions of higher education, exclusion from social and professional association with students or teachers, denial of education honors rightfully earned, and social patterns or pressures which discourage the individual from pursuing a professional or business education. In employment, SBA considers factors such as unequal treatment in hiring, promotions and other aspects of professional advancement, pay and fringe benefits, or other terms and conditions of employment. So things like that. For business history, the SBA considers factors such as unequal access to credit or capital. So, like I said, check out that guide that we have linked here, the guide for writing the social disadvantage narrative, and that'll give you some more examples as to what to include. But, just make sure you indicate which identity or identities are the basis of your social disadvantage, and be ready to have, the description of the incidents in which the bias or discrimination has occurred. For each incident, you will be asked to describe, who, what, where, why, when, and how. In the guide, you'll see that incidents are more readable if they provide information in the following order as they are listed here. So when, where, who, what, why, how. So you're going to want to explain, when the discriminatory conduct occurred. You can give exact dates if that's available. That is preferred, but it's not necessary, as long as the incident provides a specific time period. The discrimination can be from any period of your life. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be experiencing, current discrimination to qualify. The where, explain where the discriminatory conduct occurred. The incident must have occurred in American society. Who, explain who committed the discriminatory action. So this could include an individual, a group of individuals, or an institution. If you have individual names available, it is preferred that you disclose that information, but it's not necessary as long as, the incident provides a specific figure or organization. So, they want to see the details on there. What, explain the discriminatory conduct. Why, explain the reason or reasons that the conduct was more likely motivated by bias or discrimination um, than other non-discriminatory reasons. Without additional facts, a mere assertion that the action was the result of bias um, or discrimination is, will not be enough to support a claim of social disadvantage. How, explain how each instance of discriminatory conduct impacted your entry into or advancement in the business world. So offensive comments or conduct, that while that's reprehensible, it's not going to necessarily support a claim of social disadvantage if there is no negative impact associated with the incident. So just be as clear as possible when you're writing that narrative or when you're, filling out that questionnaire on certify.gov to make sure that all of these who, what, where, why, when, how are addressed, that you explain everything in detail. Okay, a socially disadvantaged individual must also be economically disadvantaged. So to be a participant in the program, you must be both socially and economically. It's not one or the other. You have to have both. So if it's more than one applicant, then all applicants must meet the criteria as well. In order to be economically disadvantaged, SBA reviews the individual's personal net worth, which must be less than $850,000 after we exclude all legitimate retirement accounts and any equity in the primary residence and the applicant firm. We also review the individual's total asset level, which may not exceed 6.5 million, with the only allowed exclusion being legitimate retirement accounts. And the individual's average 3-year income may not exceed 400,000. So because California is a community property state, we will also look at your spouse's assets as well. So we're going to split everything 50-50. Whatever you claim to own on your own, 50% goes to your spouse and 50% will go on your personal financial statement for purposes of determining your adjusted net worth. So your salary and your income are going to be verified through tax returns. If you are interested in calculating this for yourself before you apply for the program, you can look up SBA Form 413. It's on our website, or you can do a simple Google search for it. So this form will help you list out your assets. So maybe if there is something you didn't think about that we would ask about, this form will help you, line by line calculate what your adjusted net worth would be. So those are the eligibility requirements for the 8A program. During the application process, you will be asked questions in all of these sections. So just make sure that you are honest and forthcoming when you complete the application. These are specific questions that are asked on the application and a big part of the eligibility criteria for the program. If you don't disclose information and the SBA discovers it, it's going to create more issues for your application. So just, be honest and forthcoming with it. It's better to disclose it and not have the SBA come back and ask for more information and, make it seem like you were trying to hide it. So even if you had like a small ticket, you should answer yes, to avoid additional questioning. Um, Sometimes you don't even have to be arrested or go to jail for it to appear on your record. So even an infraction could appear on your record. If we do find anything, we will ask for an explanation, or we can come back and ask like, hey, why didn't you disclose this? So just be honest and forthcoming when you are completing the questionnaire online. There are some things that would have an impact on your application. So if we see like a pattern of you constantly getting in trouble, if you're in and out of jail, if you have felonies or any violence or business integrity, if you're writing bad checks or things like that, that could really impact your application. There are some things that you may think are going to impact it, but they really wouldn't. So, like let's say if you have an underage drinking citation or a citation for recreational drug use or jaywalking, something like that, that's not really going to impact your application. If that happened like when you were younger or whatever it may be. So just be as honest as possible when you're completing the application. Next, we're going to be talking about actually how to go ahead and go through the process of applying for the 8A program. Once you are ready to apply for this program, you will want to follow the steps outlined in this slide. So we always recommend that you get official copies of governing documents. So, any document related to your business, at one point or another, you're going to need to reference that. So just make sure you have all your paperwork together and make sure you know where your articles of incorporation are, your meeting minutes, stock certificates, things like that. Step number 2 here, create a free profile in the federal government's system for award management, sam.gov. Anyone who wants to do business with the federal government must have this profile set up. The system is free, takes a few weeks to sign up, but please go ahead and start that as soon as possible. The application, step 3 of the application process is to start the free application on SBA's website, which is certified.sba.gov. Before you can access the application, you will need to have your SAM profile set up. So Certify will let you, start a profile, but they will need to verify your UEI and SAM profile before letting you proceed to the actual application. Applications for the 8A Business Development Program are processed in about 90 days. So, just have your documents ready in case anything is missing or the reviewer needs further clarification. Just provide as much information as possible, respond to the reviewer. They'll contact you via email or through the Certify system itself through messages in there. They will send you a letter listing each deficiency or areas that require more information. So it's very clear, the information they need to go through with your application, to continue reviewing your application. Your application is processed by analysts in one of 2 8A processing centers. So it'll either go to San Francisco or Philadelphia, and you'll be notified if your application was approved or not. If you're accepted into the program, your profile in DSBS and SAM will show, your approval date and exit date for the program, because it's just the 9-year term, and that'll show on those websites. Maintain your eligibility and certification in the 8A program. Once you are in the program, you have to maintain, your eligibility and certification. So you're going to be responsible for maintaining your continued eligibility in the program. So on an annual basis, you will need to certify that you continue to meet, the requirements for the program. So you'll have an annual review, and you'll submit, information to your assigned business opportunity specialist, and they'll contact you about that once you are in the program. So, yeah, that concludes the application portion of it. If your application is returned to you and you plan to resubmit, you may attend a focused training session put on by headquarters. They address common application errors. So If you submit your application and it gets returned to you, you can attend one of these sessions so that your firm can jump the line and your application will be moved to the front of the line once you resubmit. So in order to receive this benefit, you will need to complete the survey that's going to be sent to you with your initial training invite. So you do that and submit it to the program office, respond to their email, and then they'll be able to, move you forward in the line. So you can find out about these training sessions by emailing 8atrainings@sba.gov. There are also a number of resources available to you on SBA's website, as well as a dedicated email box for general information. If you have any technical questions when completing the application, please reach out to the Certified Help Desk. Locally, we can answer general questions about the 8A program, but we have no say when it comes to your actual application. So I do recommend you reach out to one of our resource partners, SBDC or SCORE, Women's Business Centers, to review your application before you submit it, just to make sure everything is in order and it doesn't delay your application processing. You can also visit the Certified Knowledge Base for all tools, frequently asked questions, and program information for the 8A Business Development Program. So this concludes the information on the 8A program. If you have any more questions, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A box. We have been answering those as we've gone through the presentation, but if anything else has come to mind, please feel free to go ahead and enter it there. As you see here on the bottom of the slide, our headquarters office also does host monthly conference calls. So if you're interested in, speaking to somebody, they have these on the third Wednesday of each month from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and you have the number and the conference ID there for you to join. We will now be discussing the HUBZone program. We will go over the eligibility criteria, applying for this program, and maintaining the certification. So what exactly is a HUBZone? So a HUBZone is a historically underutilized business zone. So this program was designed to help small firms in certain communities gain access to federal contract opportunities. HUBZone areas are typically areas of low, median household incomes or high unemployment or both of those situations. We will talk about how you identify these zones in the following slides. The HUBZone program certifies the eligibility of businesses in disadvantaged communities to compete for federal set-aside contracts, offering employment and growth opportunities where they're most needed for positive economic impact. What are the key program benefits of this program? So the government has a mandate of awarding 3% of all prime contract dollars to HUBZone certified firms. So just for reference here, we have that in FY22, the federal government spent $16.3 billion on HUBZone contracts. At any given time, there are about 5,000 small firms that are certified in the HUBZone program. In this program, there are contract set-asides and sole source opportunities for those firms that get certified into the HUBZone program. HUBZone firms also receive a 10% price evaluation preference applied to full and open competition. So what does that mean? So if you are certified as HUBZone and you bid on a project that is open to competition, then you get a 10% price evaluation preference applied to the contract when you're being compared to a large business. So if solely based on price and you and a large business have the same pricing, they will apply that 10% price evaluation preference, which means that they're going to add 10% to that large business's bid so that your bid would be considered lower. So this is the only federal program that applies this benefit outside of set-asides, because generally your benefit is for your certification only, but this program lets you use it on full and open competition as well. So where are these HUBZones? Across the country, there are more than 22,000 communities that are designated as HUBZones. So There are 7 different designations, and the 7 categories are census tract, county, Indian land, disaster area, a BRAC area, which is a base realignment and closure, redesignated or transitional areas, and the governor's designated areas. So the basis for all of these areas are high unemployment and or low income. Information is gathered from the Department of Labor, census data, etc., different websites, different resources to make that determination. The HUBZone maps are updated every 5 years as opposed to annually. In the past, they were updated on an annual basis, but now they've decided to go ahead and update the maps for qualified areas every 5 years. So this 5-year redesignation provides small businesses with the ability to plan and invest in their HUBZone communities without fear that their designation may change from 1 year to the next. So SBA regulations also provide an additional 3 years of designation for expiring HUBZones. These are what are known as redesignated HUBZone areas. And this is just to help companies prepare for the transition to a new HUBZone. So every 5 years, the HUBZone program is required to update the HUBZone designations to ensure the program continues to serve the communities that are most in need of assistance. Most areas stay the same, but there are some minor changes. And right now, the map that is live on our website is a 2023 map, and that won't be updated again until July of 2028 to reflect changes to qualified census tracts and qualified non-metropolitan counties. In 2026, I believe, it's going to reflect expiring redesignated areas, and throughout any year to reflect new and expiring governor designated covered areas and qualified disaster areas as appropriate. So they do make updates between those 5 years, but generally most of the major updates take place every 5 years. If you visit the SBA website, you can find the HUBZone maps to look up your address and see if you are located within a HUBZone. The map is color-coded and is easy to read. You can play around with it, zoom in and out to go ahead and identify these qualified areas. So this is a good tool to use if you're thinking about moving your business or opening a new business and you'd like to be considered for the HUBZone program. We do recommend that you enter a specific address for best results, and you can do that here in this green arrow area because if you're just eyeballing it, one side of it could be claimed as a HUBZone and across the street it's not. So just to get the most accurate information, go ahead and plug in an address there to make sure that you are in a HUBZone area. Okay, so in order to be able to bid on and receive federal contracts that are set aside for small businesses in designated HUBZones, firms must apply for certification and must maintain compliance with the rules of the program. So let's go ahead now and talk about the eligibility requirements for this certification. So to be eligible for this program, there are 4 major eligibility requirements that must be met. So we are going to take a look at the size of your business. So you must be a small business in accordance to SBA size standards. Another important reason to know your NAICS code, your primary NAICS code. The ownership, you must be at least 51% owned by U.S. citizens. If there are multiple owners making up that 51%, all owners must be U.S. citizens. The SBA does not consider holders of permanent visas and resident aliens to be citizens. Your principal office must be located within a HUBZone, and you must have at least 35% of your employees residing in a HUBZone. You can find the full qualification criteria or eligibility criteria in Title 13, Part 126, Subpart B of the Code of Federal Regulations, and that's the text that you see here in red. So we're going to cover these 4 areas in the following slides, but this is the basic eligibility requirements for this program. So size. As I've mentioned before, you have to be a small business in accordance with SBA size standard table, so it's important to identify those NAICS codes. At the time of application for your certification into the HUBZone program, you must meet SBA size standards for your primary industry classification. At the time of an initial contract offer, a HUBZone small business concern must be small for the size standard corresponding to the NAICS code assigned to the contract. That is why it's very important to make sure you've identified your NAICS code and make sure that you indeed are a small business based on SBA's size standard. In addition to size, we will also look at ownership. The business must be directly and unconditionally owned and controlled by at least 51% U.S. citizens. As I said, if there are multiple owners making up that 51%, all owners must be U.S. citizens. Your business or principal office must be located within a designated HUBZone. So now a principal office means the location where the greatest number of the concerned employees at any one location perform their work. So if an employee works at multiple locations, then the employee will be deemed to work at the location where the employee spends more than 50% of his or her time. So if an employee does not spend more than 50% of his or her time at any one location, and at least one of those locations is a non-HUBZone location, then the employee will be deemed to work at a non-HUBZone location. In order for a location to be considered the principal office, the concern must conduct business at this location. So you can't just look at the map or find an address that is HUBZone qualified and put that down on paper. It actually has to be, where the work is physically being performed. For those concerns whose primary industry classification is services or construction, your employees are out in the field, they're not at the same location every day. The determination of principal office excludes the concerned employees who perform more than 50% of their work at job site locations to fulfill specific contract obligations. So if all of your employees perform more than 50% of their work at job sites, then the concern, your small business does not comply with the principal office requirement. Aside from being located in a HUBZone, at least 35% of your employees must also reside in a HUBZone. And for this program, the SBA has its own definition as to what an employee is for purposes of applying to the program. So to the SBA, an employee means all individuals employed on a full-time, part-time, or other basis, as long as that individual works a minimum of 40 hours per month. So not 40 hours per week, 40 hours per month. So this can include employees obtained from a temporary employee agency, from a leasing concern, or through a union agreement. Volunteers are not considered employees, and you cannot count them as part of the 35% requirement. Now, SBA also has its own definition for reside. So the SBA defines reside to live in a primary residence at a place for at least 180 days, or as a currently registered voter and with intent to live there indefinitely. So if you have, an employee that is in a HUBZone area, but they're pretty new to the area, they haven't been there too long, they just moved, if they've been at their new address for like 30, 60 days, and they can demonstrate their intent by updating their ID or driver's license, and then you would submit a copy of that with your application to make sure that you meet that requirement. When you are calculating these percentages, when determining the percentage of employees that reside in a HUBZone, if the percentage results in a fraction, you can go ahead and round up to the nearest whole number. This, figuring out the residency or your principal office location, that may be a little tricky. So if you have a specific scenario that you're unsure how to count your employees and whether or not they qualify, feel free to reach out to us, and we can go through your scenario and see if you do meet that criteria or not. Okay, before you can participate in the HUBZone program, you must be certified by SBA. So we do recommend that you review on our website the top tips for HUBZone certification tip sheet. You can take a look at that, and then now we're going to talk about the steps that you have to take in order to get HUBZone certified. On our website, you can also find information about the program and eligibility guidelines in the SBA's latest frequently asked questions. So if you go to sba.gov, that'll also be listed there as well. Okay, so step number one of the application process is to make sure you have a SAM account set up. This is why it is so important to have that profile set up as soon as possible for any of SBA's certification programs. Once your SAM profile is set up, you will need to visit SBA Connect, which the website is connect.sba.gov, in order for you to request access to the HUBZone application portal. So if you have a SAM profile already set up, you do not need to sign up for a new account in SBA Connect. You may use the same login info as SAM. So those two websites are connected. So we do have an instructional video for you to request access to the HUBZone portal. You can fast forward to about minute 2:15, I believe it is, of the video for instructions. The beginning of the video is just going to, talk about setting up a new account. But if you already have SAM registered, you can just skip ahead to see how you request the application portal for the HUBZone program. Once you have gained access to the HUBZone portal, you're ready to begin the application. So just, follow the prompts in the HUBZone section. Step number 4 would be, to check your email for time-sensitive instructions. Make sure, you're also checking your spam folder, as messages, sometimes end up there. You will need to electronically verify your application within 2 business days after you've submitted it through SBA Connect. During step number 5, you will need to submit the requested supporting documentation to support your application. So you will receive an email confirmation. They'll tell you you have about 3 business days to complete this step. And in the next slide, I will share with you the type of documentation that will be needed. So just please note that your submission cannot be assigned for eligibility review until all required documents are submitted. So be prepared to respond for additional information as soon as you hit submit on that application. Failure to do so may result in a decline or withdrawal of your application. And once your application is approved, you're going to want to check that your status was updated in SAM and DSBS. The SBA typically updates your status within 48 hours of approval. So just go back into SAM after that and double check, make sure that it shows your active certification when you came into the program and that everything is up to date with the information there. On this slide, as I said, we have some examples of the documents that will be requested to support your application. So make sure to read the full instructions from the HUBZone office so you know exactly what they need to see. Make sure you provide a copy of a fully executed lease, a copy of the most recent utility bill for the firm's principal office. Make sure that it shows the period of usage and shows the service location. If you cannot provide a utility bill because utilities are included under the terms of the lease, you can provide a citation showing where the lease provides that utilities are included. Just make it as clear as possible to the reviewer to make sure that you have addressed that with your application, that it is part of your supporting documentation. We do have a supporting document checklist available on our website, or you can click on the link below there, or above, I should say. You can click on the link above once you get a copy of the presentation. You will be required to submit different supporting documentation based on your ownership and business structure. So just, be sure to name each file using the naming convention that is outlined in that checklist. So important to have that handy when you are completing your application, so you make sure you're following everything and there's no delays in processing your application. The final step in the application process is the electronic verification step. So the application is not received as an active submission until the firm's highest ranking officer completes the electronic verification step. So the electronic verification attests that all information is true and correct. So if you skip this step, if you don't complete this, in the system, it's going to show that your application is incomplete. So make sure to check your spam folder, your inbox, and carefully read over the instructions provided in the email that you will receive. I believe they give you like 2 days to complete this step after you submit your online application. If you are declined for any reason for the HUBZone program, you may seek certification again after 90 calendar days from the date of the decline. If you have a complete application, applications will be processed typically within 60 days. So just make sure that, check that a signature is included, that the correct boxes are checked off, and like I said, so it doesn't delay your application at all. Make sure that the documents you send in, like your supporting documentation, that those are legible, especially those that are related to, citizenship, the HUBZone residency, principal office, like that main criteria to get into the program. Make sure that, it's not blurry or anything like that, that none of the documents you submit are expired or anything like that, or it's an old utility bill that you send in. And importantly, all leases must be signed by both parties, and it must contain dates as to when that was signed. So make sure all of that is checked off, before you send that in for the final review. So what happens once you are approved for the HUBZone program? So in the next few slides, we will talk about some actions that need to be taken in order for you to maintain your certification in good standing. HUBZone regulations require that all certified HUBZone firms recertify annually that they remain in compliance with the program's requirements. So although there is no limit to the length of time a firm may qualify as a HUBZone firm, the certification is not a lifetime certification. You will need to recertify for the HUBZone program once a year, around your anniversary, your approval date of when you came into the program. Please note that if a firm fails to recertify within the required time frame, the SBA will propose the firm for decertification. So once you are in the program, feel free to take a look at that recertification fact sheet for helpful tips on completing these steps. During your active participation in the program, a program examination will also be required every 3 years. So this may sometimes include a site visit that would be conducted by a member of your local district office. And a program examination is just an investigation by SBA officials to verify the accuracy of any certification made or information provided as part of the HUBZone application or recertification process. So you will need to provide documents similar to those submitted with your initial application, which may include, corporate documents, firm employee and location lists, payroll records, utility bills, your employee HUBZone residency documents, a copy of the lease agreement or rental agreement, things like that. So you will receive an email from headquarters with instructions for completing this step. Some of the possible outcomes of a program examination are that, the SBA determines the firm is eligible. So in that case, SBA is going to send you a written notice, to your firm, and you'll, continue to be certified in the HUBZone program, and your status will be reflected in SAM and DSBS. Now, if the SBA determines that the firm is not eligible, then you will receive a written notice of the proposed decertification, and then you will have 30 days to submit documentation, supporting your continued eligibility in the program. So, that email that comes from headquarters will include specific instructions for responding. They'll let you know exactly what they need to see in order for you to maintain your certification. Now, if you fail to respond, then the SBA may propose decertification, based on your failure to cooperate with the program examination. And then, of course, once you're in the program, you can take a look at that program examination fact sheet, which has more information on what these program examinations entail. In order to get the most out of your HUBZone certification, you want to make sure you take advantage of all the resources that are available to you. So, look into perhaps participating in a joint venture. With a joint venture, you can get enhanced market penetration, share costs, and expenses and returns. These can help you increase knowledge and experience. You can also utilize the mentor protege program. This can help you enhance your firm's capabilities. It can, help me establish business plan goals and improve your ability to compete for contracts. You can also get access to other certification programs. So, gain access to further contracting opportunities by combining the HUBZone certification with other certification types. You can get certified for the 8A Business Development Program, the WOSB program, the VetCert program, and even certifications at the state and local levels. Make sure you take advantage and receive that technical assistance for business plans, coaching, technology, and financing services. So take advantage of, SBA has a lot of resource partners. They're here to offer you assistance with training, executive education, and one-on-one consulting in a broad range of business disciplines. So make sure you take advantage of that. There's also technical assistance for business plans, coaching, technology, and financing services. You have to be proactive in your self-marketing. The HUBZone program is not a contracting program. The program requires significant commitment on the part of the business, to market its products or services in order to succeed in the program. So focus on areas in your niche market and prioritize, identify federal buyers, get to know them, identify the agency contracting procedures and those who make buying decisions, and make contacts through small business events and network your business in order to really get the most out of your HUBZone certification. There are a number of ways to get assistance with your HUBZone application. I would like to mention that the HUBZone program is managed out of DC. So to get more specific answers, we recommend that you contact them directly. Here locally, we do not have access to SBA Connect, and we cannot review applications or view the status of your application. There is a dedicated email address for all inquiries, so you can email them at hubzone@sba.gov. The HUBZone Program Office also offers conference calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they are available during those times to answer any questions you may have. If you'd like to speak to a live person, you can call in during those times and ask your question to receive an answer. So this concludes the overview of the HUBZone program. If you have any more questions, I hope you're entering those into the chat and we're getting to them as quickly as possible in there. But yeah, that's the end for the HUBZone program, and now we'll go ahead and move into the WOSB program. Okay, so the next program we will be talking about is the Woman-Owned Small Business Federal Contracting Program. So WOSB for short for Woman-Owned Small Business, and EDWOSB for Economically Disadvantaged Woman-Owned Small Business. So the federal government's goal is to award at least 5% of all federal contracting dollars to women-owned small businesses each year. So joining the WOSB Federal Contracting Program makes a business eligible to compete for federal contracts that are set aside for this program. So firms can still compete for contract awards under other socioeconomic programs that you may qualify for. For those firms that choose not to participate in the SBA's WOSB Federal Contracting Program, you may continue to identify as a woman-owned small business in SAM.gov for the purposes of competing for other contracts. However, if you do this, you're not going to be eligible to pursue federal contracts that are restricted for SBA certified woman-owned small businesses and or economically disadvantaged woman-owned small businesses. As you can see on this slide here, in FY 2022, WOSBs were awarded $28.1 billion, mostly in industries in professional, scientific, and technical services and construction. How do you know if the WOSB program is right for you? Let's touch on the eligibility criteria for this program. So to be eligible for the Women's Contracting Program, Women-Owned Small Business Contracting Program, a business must be a small business in accordance to SBA's size standards, be at least 51% owned and controlled by one or more women who are U.S. citizens. You must have women manage the day-to-day operations and also make long-term decisions for the firm. Women must hold the highest officer position and possess the managerial experience. And your NAICS code must be listed on one of the eligible lists. We will go over this in a couple of slides, but just know that this program is restricted to a list of specific NAICS codes. There is also no minimum amount of time in business that is required in order to be eligible for this program. In order to qualify as an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business, one or more economically disadvantaged women must unconditionally and directly own at least 51% of the applicant firm. So each individual whose ownership interest will be used to qualify for the economically disadvantaged designation must submit documentation demonstrating their financial condition meets the defined economic threshold. So for personal net worth, that must be less than $850,000, excluding, the women's ownership interest in the concern and their equity interest in the primary personal residence. The income must be $400,000 or less in adjusted gross income, averaged over the previous 3 years preceding the certification. Your total assets must be $6.5 million or less for the fair market value of all personal assets, and this is including primary residence and the value of the business concern. In order to demonstrate eligibility for program participation, all applicants must provide proof of U.S. citizenship, regardless as to which certification you're applying for. If you're just going for the woman-owned small business or economically disadvantaged, you will need to provide proof of U.S. citizenship. Depending on your business structure, you will also be asked to provide additional documentation. If you're an LLC, you will need to provide things, such as the articles of organization, operating agreements. Corporations will need to provide articles of incorporation, bylaws, stock ledgers. It just needs to be proven on paper that women are running the business in order to participate in this program. So make sure you have all your legal business documents ready and that they show that women are the ones running the business. If you are applying for the economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business certification, additional documentation will be needed. You will need to complete the questionnaire for economically disadvantaged, fill out a personal financial statement. That's that SBA Form 413 we mentioned earlier. You must submit a completed and signed IRS Form 4506T so that we may confirm your revenue and earnings, as well as copies of your 2 most recent personal tax returns, including W-2 forms, and any other additional information to confirm your eligibility. If you don't have W-2s, you may submit your 1099s. That's acceptable as well. And just know, the SBA can come back and request additional information if it's determined that additional information is necessary in order to prove your economic disadvantage. As I mentioned earlier, to qualify for this program, your NAICS code must fall under a certain list of eligible industries. So not all NAICS codes are eligible. So these contracts for WOSB and EDWOSB are for specific industries where women-owned small businesses are underrepresented. So the SBA maintains a list of those eligible industries and their NAICS codes. So that's another important reason to make sure you know your NAICS code, and make sure that your NAICS code appears on the list before you apply for this program. You can click on the link above for a full list of eligible industries. If your NAICS code is not on either list, then there are no contract opportunities for you under this program. There are about 733 eligible industries. I believe about 626 are designated for limited competition among all WOSB program participants, and an additional 100 or so are eligible for competition among only SBA certified economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses. So Congress does require SBA to conduct a study every 5 years to identify industries in which small businesses owned and controlled by women are underrepresented in the federal marketplace. And you can find a link to the most recent study on our website as well if you're interested in looking that up. On this slide here, you can see the number of program participants we have had. This slide is a little outdated. It's from 2022, but there's, almost 6,000 people certified into this program. And we have a list of like the top NAICS codes for the WOSB on the left and EDWOSB on the right. So you can kind of see which sectors, which industries are getting most of these contracts that are set aside for women-owned small businesses. Once you are ready to apply for this program, you will need to follow the steps outlined on this slide. So first and foremost, register your business in SAM.gov. The System for Award Management is a registration system that's owned by GSA and located at SAM.gov. So this is, where companies represent their eligibility for federal contracts. And in order to begin the process of certifying as a WOSB or EDWOSB, you must first establish a user account on the SAM site. After you have submitted your information, your account must be approved in SAM in order to apply and certify for the WOSB certification. It does take a while to register in SAM, so make sure you do that as soon as possible. You're going to submit your actual application for this program at wosb.certify.sba.gov and just follow the prompts there to complete the application. Certify does pull information from SAM. That's why it's so important to have your SAM profile set up first. So on this site, you're going to complete, your forms and upload your supporting documentation into Certify directly. I do encourage you to take a look at the WOSB/EDWOSB quick start guide that's available on our website in order to view the tasks, and I think they even have screenshots of step-by-step, how to complete this application. So this guide covers, how to create your account, how to claim your business in the system, and, gives you prompts as to how to fill out the actual application in Certify. Once your application is approved, the SBA will update your status in SAM and DSBS. So it'll show when you came into the program, the date you were certified, and if you just hold a WOSB or EDWOSB certifications. The application process for the WOSB program is completely free. There is not a fee to apply for this program. However, if you would rather go through a third-party certifier, please note that there are only 4 approved organizations by the SBA. So these are the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the National Women Business Owners Corporation, U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce, and the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. So you can reach out to them to find out about their certification process and any associated costs. The only benefit of going through a third-party certifier is that You will have access to member exclusive events hosted by these organizations. But if you want to save some money, this is totally something you could do for free on your own or with the assistance of one of our resource partners. The SBDC, SCORE, Women's Business Centers. They can do this for free as well. So up to you if you want to sign up for one of these organizations or if you want to try doing it on your own. If you are a participant in one of SBA's other certification programs, such as the 8A Business Development Program, the SBA will take that existing certification as proof of your eligibility for the WOSB program. So this will help cut down the application process and the paperwork that needs to be submitted in the WOSB portal. So if you are a current 8A participant and meet the eligibility criteria for the WOSB program, you may apply for the program and submit minimal documentation. So if you're already in the program, you would just provide, a copy of your most recent annual review letter. If you just came into the program, you would provide a copy of your acceptance letter into the program. And just upload that into the WOSB portal, and you wouldn't have to add all that supporting documentation. Our analysts do have access to view participants' 8A information and certify, and they can confirm your eligibility that way. The SBA also allows participation from firms certified by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs Center for Verification and Evaluations, CVE for short, provided they meet all eligibility requirements. So firms must provide their CVE certificate and supporting documentation through the certified website. If you are seeking the EDWOSB designation, then you would still need to include all that financial information, the SBA Form 413, the questionnaire, the tax returns, the W-2s. But that's only if you're also applying for the EDWOSB, not for the WOSB. The certified application process is going to be a lot easier for you if you gather your documents, before you start the actual application. We do have a number of checklists available which identify the documents that applicants will be required to submit in the application process. So be sure to, take a look at those. Once you're on our website, you can navigate to the Prepare page and review the documents that will be required when you apply. It's going to provide you links for each program, which directs you to the preparation checklist of that program. You can also, scroll down, I think, and navigate to the checklists that are there. So just make sure you gather the necessary documents. Your documents should be saved as individual PDF files. You shouldn't include a zipped file, a folder. And just make sure you use the proper naming convention for your files. I do believe there is a size limit on the files. They have to be 25 megabytes or less, I believe. And just make sure you don't, password protect any of your files, because that's just going to delay the review of your application. The WOSB program recently introduced a series of short videos addressing various aspects of the application process. This was in response to applicant feedback, and also aligned with SBA's objective to continually improve customer experience. So they identified 6 areas to help improve the application submission. So they have videos on tax documents and financials, the information you need for the EDWOSB, outside employment, ownership, resumes, governing documents, stock ledgers, stock certificates, and meeting minutes and bylaws. So I invite you to check those out and see, make sure you have the correct supporting documentation, that's exactly what they want to see, just to make sure before you upload that. This program is managed by headquarters, and only they can answer questions regarding your application. So please reach out to them at wosb@sba.gov. Make sure to include your firm name and UEI number so that they can easily pull that up. If you experience any technical difficulties while trying to complete the application, please submit a help request via an online form as well. If you are interested in signing up for training directly from our program office, please send them an email to wosbtraining@sba.gov so they can provide you with their schedule. And then just please note that processing time is currently taking over 180 days. The WOSB program office is backlogged, and they ask that you be patient. Once your application has been deemed complete, you will receive a notification indicating that your application has reached the processing stage. So the SBA has 90 days from the beginning of the processing stage to render a determination. But just keep in mind that due to their current backlog, the processing time may take a little longer. So this concludes our presentation on the WOSB contracting program. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into our Q&A box, and we will be sure to get to those. Our final presentation for today will be on the Veteran Small Business Certification, or VetCert for short. So every year, the federal government awards a portion of contracting dollars specifically to businesses owned by veterans. Also, small businesses owned by veterans may be eligible to purchase surplus property from the federal government, which we will discuss in the next few slides. First, let's talk about the benefits of certification for the VetCert program. So the federal government aims to award at least 3% of all federal contracting dollars to small disadvantaged veteran-owned small businesses each year. Competition is limited for certain federal contract opportunities to businesses that participate in the service-disabled veteran-owned small business program. Joining the service-disabled veteran-owned small business program makes your business eligible to compete for the program's set-aside and sole source contracts. Service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses may self-certify their status to compete for set-aside contracts at most federal agencies. However, the VA does not recognize the service-disabled veteran-owned small business self-certification. So self-certified service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses must now apply for the SBA certification. This came into effect just January of this year, and you're going to need SBA certification in order to be able to compete for set-aside contracts within the federal government. Certified veteran-owned small businesses have additional opportunities to pursue sole source and set-aside contracts at the Department of Veterans Affairs under the VA's VetCert Program. You can also compete for contracts under other qualifying socioeconomic programs. If you were previously certified through the VA, you will need to take action in the new VetCert portal that's now handled through SBA. There is additional guidance on a grace period or an extension for existing participants. So I invite you to check out our website for the latest information on that. And if you need any assistance with this, please feel free to reach out to our office so we can walk you through that process as well. To apply for certification with SBA as a veteran-owned small business or a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, a firm must meet the following requirements. You must be considered a small business as defined by the size standard corresponding to any NAICS code listed in the business's SAM profile. Have no less than 51% of the business owned and controlled by one or more veterans. For certification as a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, you must have no less than 51% of the business owned and controlled by one or more veterans rated as service-disabled by the VA. For those veterans who are permanently and totally disabled and unable to manage the daily business operations of their business may still qualify if their spouse or appointed permanent caregiver is assisting in that management. Once you have determined your eligibility for this program, you will want to make sure that you are also registered in SAM.gov. You cannot move forward with the application process if you are not registered in SAM.gov. As I've mentioned throughout our presentation today, setting up that SAM profile does take a few weeks, so you will want to get started on that as soon as possible. A list of required documentation is available on sba.gov/VetCert. You can find a PDF file there for preparing for SBA Veteran Small Business Certification. As a participant in the VetCert program, you may wish to also join the Surplus Personal Property Program. So veteran-owned small businesses can access federally owned personal property that is no longer in use through the General Services Administration's Federal Surplus Personal Property Donation Program. So this program, is overseen by GSA, and they're in charge of, the donations of federal personal property. They manage that GSAaccess.gov website. They allocate property to the state for donation, and they review state agency for surplus property operations. So anything that gets donated in any state, GSA oversees that, and you would have access to that surplus property for purchase and for use in your normal business activities. Veteran-owned small businesses may get federal surplus property from the state agency for surplus property in the state where the property will be primarily located and used. You will have to agree to all of these terms and conditions listed here on this slide. So you must agree in writing that your veteran-owned small business is located and operated within the state, is unconditionally owned and controlled by one or more eligible veterans, service-disabled veterans, or surviving spouses, that you have registered and you are certified or in certified status in SBA's VetCert Program database, will use the property in the normal conduct of its business activities. Personal or non-business use is strictly prohibited, that you will not sell, transfer, loan, or lease, or otherwise dispose of the property during the period of restriction unless you have received express written authorization from SASP, GSA, and SBA. You will get permission from the donating SASP before permanently removing the property from the state. You will use the property as intended within 1 year of receipt. You will maintain your veteran-owned small business eligibility with the SBA and SASP for the duration of the applicable federal period of restriction for donated property. And you will give the SBA, GSA, and/or SASP access to inspect the property and all pertinent records. So if you're interested in participating in this program, you can contact the SASP in the state where your veteran-owned small business is headquartered for more details on the program requirements and eligibility. To get the most up-to-date information on this program, I encourage you to visit the SBA's website. This program is also managed out of headquarters, and we do not have access to your application here in the field. So for program-specific questions, please reach out to vetcert@sba.gov. For more general questions, you can reach out to your local district office or one of our resource partners. If you rather speak to someone, there is a dedicated call center that can assist, and the number is listed here on this slide. The call center is available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So this concludes our presentation for today. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have found the information helpful and that you are ready to go ahead and apply for our programs. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, you will receive a copy with live links. So we will be sending that out within the next 24 to 48 hours. But for now, I will leave you with my email address. Should you have any follow-up questions that you wish to discuss with me, you can go ahead and email me. But thank you so much for your time this morning, and I do hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.